I'll just let you walk him around a little bit. So what I was going to work on was contact. It's a pretty common issue. Most horses come to me with some kind of contact issues. They're either evasive or head tossing, or you can't get the bridle on, or they fiddle with the bit, or they chomp. You got no brakes or steering. So the first demo horse we had actually had to cancel because owner had COVID, but he was described as having brakes and steering like turning the Titanic. So we were going to work with him, but unfortunately we had a ring in. So thanks to Yasmin, because she just popped her horse on a float and literally bumped him here today from this morning's message. Apparently, so this guy has literally been stopped racing 2 months ago. She's had him on her property for 2 weeks. He doesn't bend, and if you had seen him when he first arrived, he basically hits the end of the line and then wants to leave, because he's still in a bit of a, pretty much like that. So my goal was that I was going to bridle him and I was going to show you how he feels about the bridle, but since he's a little bit like this, horses, we're going to work with what we've got, because that's what we've got and that's what's important for him. So this morning I kind of talked a little bit about communication versus control, and what I would do if I met a horse for the first time. And if I met a horse for the first time, I wouldn't dive in and start making them do a bunch of stuff. I would try to observe them so that I know how I'm going to approach my training later on, how to direct my training, what's the best approach for this horse, try to help them to find their own self-regulation and self-control. So the first step, I talked about 3 steps that I go through working on that communication. The first one is teaching the horse how to regulate themselves. So in order to do that, he's got to be able to find his own centre mentally and physically, because one is going to off-balance the other and vice versa. The other thing I mentioned, thank you, I'll take over, see what happens. Hi! So I only have 2 rules. No pushing, no pulling. So I don't want him to put tension in this rope, which he likes to do at the moment, and I don't want him to push into me. So if that happens, I'm going to redirect his focus. Anything other than that is fair game. Good boy. And I did mention that something I don't do with a horse that is, good boy, that is anxious or moving their feet. Moving their feet is a common, I guess, remedy for a horse that moves its feet. But I've already got a horse that moves its feet, so why do I want to move its feet some more? I guess the goal would be distraction. But if I start to move his feet and add on jobs, he's already not focused. So he's not in a frame of mind where he's going to really learn anything. Because what I want him to do is to stop moving his feet. If he moves his feet way too much. So he's still at the racetrack. So in his mind, he's just ready to go the whole time, and all he wants to do is leave, and leave pretty quickly. So my goal for him would be that I want him to figure out that he doesn't have to leave the whole time. He doesn't have to be going quick, his brain doesn't need to be at 1,000,000 miles an hour, his legs don't need to be at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And you can see that he's quite unfocused, so he's really focused on leaving me. He doesn't think I have anything good to say at the moment. He's more focused about whatever's out there. So the first thing would be that I want him to self-regulate himself and start to kind of be here with me. The second thing, good boy, would be that I want him to start to connect with me, because otherwise how am I going to get him to do anything? If he doesn't value what I've got to say, he's not going to be inclined to be very willing, and I'm going to hit a bunch of roadblocks and I'm going to hit resistance. So I'm waiting for that right there. And it's his choice. I'm not going to try to force myself on him, because in doing that I'm upping the pressure, and you can see that there's a lot going on with him. So adding on more things to his to-do list isn't going to help him. So he's a little bit more mindful now when he, good boy, a little bit of a release. He's a little little bit of reassurance, see if he stays. If he tries to connect with me, I'm going to try to connect back at his muzzle. If he doesn't take that, that's okay. If he starts to move off, what I tend to do is actually move away rather than try to make him stand still. Because I can make him stand still, but the problem is, me being here, that's a pressure to him, and that's why he leaves. So what I'm watching for, once he gets that connection, so he's slowing down a little bit, and I want him to start being mindful. Himself, or if he's struggling, he's going to try to look at me and ask me for help. And hopefully I've got some tools in my toolbox by this point that I can help him to either refocus mentally or rebalance himself physically. And then one of those is going to help me to gain the other one. And then we're all hopefully on the same page. Drop his energy a little bit. So his posture is also going to match his central nervous system. So if he's in a heightened posture, so head up here and he's really braced on the forehand, that's going to trip out his central nervous system. So once he started to come down a little bit, what I can do is see if he's actually noticed me and actually cares where I'm at. Because before, he really didn't care where I was at. He was just intent on leaving. So he's not entirely sure. So he's not quite so much fire breathing dragon now. So what I'm looking for as far as his facial expression, I'm looking for eyes, ears, and his muzzle. So I want him to be soft blinking, I want his ears to be mobile, and I want him to be licking and chewing. But it's not a one-time deal. So if he continues to cycle through that really quickly, I know that he hasn't fully let down. He's just triggered repeatedly to get into that heightened state. So I need him to come down and then be able to stay down. If you're really stressed and had a bad day, you're really easily triggered. It really easily trips you out to get really frustrated and annoyed again. So it's no good if he's giving me lots of licking and chewing. He's letting it go, but then it also means that there's a lot of stress. So my goal would be that they get longer and slower. There's a bigger time frame to where he's down than when he's up. I want to avoid like these really sharp peaks and then really big dips. Anyway, so this is a little better. You gotta go round. Good boy. Big breath out. So we're kind of coming back to earth a little bit. So your connection kind of starts here. And I haven't had to do a lot for it, apart from show him that he feels a bit better when he's found then he draw. Because otherwise I'm constantly saying to him, go away, and then I want to be in his space all the time. So it's a bit of a conflicting message. Boy. If he settles down a bit, I might try to get that bridle on.
Yep.
Boy. So I don't mind that his focus isn't always on me, as long as I can get it back when I need it. If I demand his focus the whole time, I'm not giving him a chance to take in all of his surroundings, and then when something happens and he's not aware of it, then it gets scary. So it's getting a little bit easier to get his brain back. Boy. Boy. Okay, let's see if we can pop a bridle on and we'll see what happens. So like I said, no idea what we were planning on working on, because what I was planning on working on didn't happen. So we're going to go with what we've got and see what he gives us. No. Like I'm out again.
Thank you.
Alright. Try if you won't stand. Alright, let's work on bridling. Just drop that down here. I will, just so I've got less straps. I know, stuff going on. So real life, you don't always get to work on what you want to work on. You go with what your horse needs. Good boy. Good. So he's not terribly keen on the bridling, and it could just be that his focus is not here, or he could have a negative association with the bridle. And I'm going to try to figure that out. So when the bridle was basically presented to him, he said no. So he turned away, he wasn't interested, but his focus was over here. So it could be that he just can't concentrate enough right now to focus on the bridle. Or it could be that he does not have a good feeling about having this bridle on and what it means. Boy. Might need a So yeah, I would say it's a negative association with the bridle. So I can put reins over, and as soon as I start coming up here, he wants to turn away and get away from it. Good boy. And I'm not going to try to just stop him. I'm going to try to go with him. So if he needs to move his feet a little bit to make himself feel better, as long as he's not dragging me around too much, I'm just going to let him do that. Come over. we're thinking about what to fix. So if your horse is not good with a bridle and they're heavy in the mouth, or they're busy in the mouth, or they try to get rid of your contact, it's a mouth issue. It's not always a mouth issue. So we change the bit, we change the bridle, we get their teeth done, which is great because we do need to cover all our bases. But a mouth problem isn't always a mouth problem. A mouth problem can be a mental problem. A mouth problem can be what's happening in the rest of his body. So if the rest of his body isn't working correctly, he's going to be hard in the mouth. And then, like I talked about earlier, if he has a negative association with that bridle and the pressure, or what that means for him, so for him it's at the track, so adrenaline, running really quick, in a straight line. And his owner's already said he won't bend. He doesn't bend at all because he's just ready to go in a straight line really quick. That's his job. So what we're going to see is, if he settles a little bit, I'm going to see how he feels about this rein. And so interesting, because as soon as I touch the bridle, when I don't touch the bridle, his mouth is still. When I touch that rein, he chomp, 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 chomp. So he's not okay with that, and he doesn't have a good response. So mouth still, we'll see what happens this time. Boy, good breathing, good boy. I'm not holding you up. So I'll see what happens when I touch this rein. And I get chomp, 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 chomp. So what I'm going to do is stay with him until he tries to release his pole and his jaw. And I don't want to add a heap of pressure. I'm just meeting him there at the bit. So I say it's a bit like a pinky promise. That's the amount of pressure I want. Because that's the amount of pressure I want him to move from. So we're grinding, 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 grinding. If we're hard in the mouth and hard in the jaw, we're hard in the pole. If we're stiff in the pole, we're not elevated in the shoulders, and we're not flexible in the ribs, and then we got no back legs. So it's pretty unproductive. So your chain of release can go from the front to the back, or the back to the front. But if there's a blockage or resistance in his body somewhere, it's going to show up. So it's going to show up in your brakes or your steering. It's not going to be fluid because the energy's not travelling around his body fluidly. And now we start to kind of push back into it a little bit. So all I want from him, boy, yeah. So pole shake, so little release. So like I said, everything's connected. If his jaw's tight, he's tied up here. He's tied up here, he's tight in the shoulders, no flexion in the ribs, no back legs. Boy. Boy. Okay, I know. So now he's trying something different. Now he's trying a bit of a reverse. See if that gets rid of it. Now he's going to try to break at the pole a little bit, come behind the vertical, see if that gets rid of it. So now he's thinking a little bit. He just hasn't found the release from it. So the steering and turning is for me, because I need that. The release is for him, and that's my positive association. So what I want from me is to have good brakes and steering. Boy. But what I want from him is to have a good feeling about doing that. Okay. Okay. So he's still not sure what I want from him, and he can't understand why this pressure doesn't go away. If he directs his thoughts in my direction, so since he's quite disconnected from this brain, if he so much as thinks in this direction, maybe like that, I'll give him a second, and then I'm going to go back to him. Boy. And we'll try again. And again, like, I don't have more pressure than him, so I'm not taking from him, and now he's frustrated because he can't figure out what the correct answer is. because usually I just latch onto that and run real quick in a straight line. Breath out. Starting to drop his neck and soften a little bit. Ooh, stuff going on. Good boy. Good boy. So a little bit of an ear flick and then followed it with his pole. So it's really small to start with because his whole mindset isn't on the same page as me. Good boy. So then he can't manage to get that bit of flexion without leaving. As soon as he tries to turn, pole shake, so he's starting to release behind his ears, it lends him to lose his balance a little bit. So here he's just blocking it out and he's interested in everything but me. Good boy. So the first thing I need is his thoughts to follow that rein. If his thoughts are not following that rein, I'm out the side door. Good boy. So here now he's actually thinking about fighting against it. So imagine what's that doing to your steering. You want to turn left and your horse is turning right. This is not really very productive. So I want to show him, so he's associating that with a bad pressure. He doesn't want to follow that because it doesn't feel good. Got a little bit of jaw. We're getting slower in the jaw and I don't have that chomping. Good. Boy. Now we're out again. We're out. Good boy. So you can see that it's not quick. I could make him turn left if I wanted to. Good boy. But longer term, it's not going to help me. And my goal is that when he turns, he's actually unlocking his pole so that he can turn straight on the end of his neck. If he's twisting, then there's a blockage. And again, I lose my steering because his shoulders and his ribs are over there. Have a little go at this side to see how he feels. Good boy. So a little easier on this side, and then he holds that flexion a little bit. And I think flexion's kind of a funny one because people teach a lot of flexion, but before they teach the flexion, they don't teach alignment. So if you have flexion and no alignment, you don't really have flexion. You got just overbending. And then again, you don't have good brakes and steering. We'll give him one more go over here. Boy. So this left rein he really wants to get away from. So what happens now when he starts turning left, a second ago we actually had alignment and he was on 2 tracks when he turned left, kind of like now. So we've had no left flexion and now I've got left flexion and he's not trying to barge into me with his left shoulder the whole time. So by unlocking him, I'm automatically helping him to get alignment. Good boy. Another pole shake. needs to move a little bit. I'm not just going to try to get all the things together. Because him getting that flexion, there we go, is hard enough for him. So if I expect him to stop, stand still, balance, and flex, so he's going to have an itch now, which means he's going to have a bit of a bigger release.
Final calls for the vegan little food truck, the Little Milk Bar, will be closing in about 20 minutes over towards the front.
Good boy. So a bit of a better response. And my hope would be that, so breath out, my hope would be that I can help him to find a bit more of a positive posture by doing this, and that his positive posture is going to help his mental state. So we're already breathing out a lot more. He's thinking about giving me a little less flexion here. Almost. So we're still a little dropped in on the shoulder. So if your horse is dropping in or out on your circle, tipping in on your left shoulder, drifting out on your right rein, there might be a blockage somewhere. If you release that blockage, you've instantly got brakes and steering. And you've got alignment, which makes your horse a whole lot easier to ride. You're also one step closer to self-carriage. Good boy. So my goal usually would do this at a standstill, but if he needs to move, because I haven't worked with him before, and his self-regulation is not the best, good boy, so left flexion. I don't want to overload him too much. So see how he kind of pushes his shoulder in? So he's really, really heavy on his shoulders, heavy on the forehand, good boy. When he starts to drop that pole, we get a little flexion. He's not tipping his shoulders into me the whole time. Because what he does is his shoulder's over here, his neck's towards me, but his head is over there. Good. Better. Better. Hey, this is a bit better. We've had that then. Come back here. Good. Now we'll see what kind of alignment we've got. Try to help him a little bit on this side. Good boy. So here we get that posture drop, and we don't have that high head carriage the whole time. I'm thinking about dropping at the wither, but you can see from that dip in his wither, he has not been lifting in front at all. So his splitting muscles are really, really underdeveloped, and that's why we get this dip right in front of his wither. I help him a little bit. Ah, he's there. Okay, then we get a little bit of resistance, and then we get our flexion. Good. Okay, so this is a more relaxed walk, and I don't know if you can tell from up there, but his back legs actually start to track through into his front legs, and his walk gets way swingier. Good. Just here. And then he loses it, so he actually can't hold it for very long either. And if he hasn't been working in engagement, it's going to be really hard for him to maintain that because he's using muscles, good boy, that he's not used to using. So I might try to just guide him with this first, and then I want to test if he's got it on his own. And if he gives me a nice circle, I might quit him. Good boy. So you want to think about which is the horse you want to ride. Because when his walk gets really nice, he looks pretty good. Good boy. Good. So here, he's really soft, he's really straight, and he's not tipping in on those shoulders. His neck starts to drop. We lose him a little bit. But now he's starting to find it on his own. So instead of when he finds the thinking about coming off to the inside because that's what makes him feel better. So we'll try again, yeah. So really light feel on my rope now can bring him back. I don't have to go to the bridle the whole time, like here. So we'll just try to straighten him. Yep, watch your reins. Just here. So see, I've not got that shoulder dropping into me anymore. I've actually got a little bit of right flexion, so I got right rein, which is good. Now I lose him a little bit. But now when I lose him, he's actually upright in this last 3/4 of his body. He's not just tipping his shoulder into me because I can be here without getting knocked out. Good boy, and a big chew. And I'll check him on the other side. Good boy. Yep. Yeah, good. 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 Now the pulse shake. Here we go. So you can see that under neck here, once he's unlocked, is really jiggly. So his pulling muscles and his brace muscles have turned off. We'll go one to the left. And I guess my goal is to show you that you want to change the way that he's feeling about that, changes his whole body. Good. So this is better. And you can see that his walk gets longer, he's a little softer, we've got blinking, he's not like a fire-breathing dragon. And when I ask him to come back, he's more willing to come back. He's like, yeah, sure. So I want to get him on side so that when I need him to listen, he listens. That's a little better. Good boy.
Don't forget to come and vote for your favourite Australian Brumby Challenge trainer. Voting will close soon.
Good boy. So I think he's done a pretty good job because I have video of when he got off the float. Apparently this is the first time that he's been out, so he's been at his new home, like I said, off the track for 2 months, been at his new home for 2 weeks, and he has not left the property since he stopped racing, since he went to his new home. So pretty much when he got here, he thought he was back at the races. Good. So this is the horse you want to ride. Good boy. And he's happy to look at me, he's happy to turn and flex. I don't have that resistance to where he's always just wanting to lead a little bit. Good boy. And that's what I want. So I wanted him to try to find at least a few seconds of that balance. Good boy. So I haven't really had to make him do anything. I've gone with what he needed me to do. If he needs me to move feet with him and stay with him, I will. And he's actually getting pretty responsive. Good. Almost. So once I manage to get him to stand still, I'll quit him. Good. Try taking a little shot. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good man. Good. So I guess that's just a snippet of how your horse's mental state can change in relation to their posture, and also just creating those good feelings associated with everything you're introducing. You want them to have a good feeling about bridling, saddling, being with you, working out, all those fun things. And I think he's done a pretty good job. Good boy. Pop this up.